Is it live? Why is it not appearing? Hello. He's so awkward. So I'm doing this live so that I could improve my communication skills, confidence, and my English. So no audience or not, with audience or not, I will read The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. For today, I will read Problems and Pain. Section 1, Discipline, Problems and Pain. Life is difficult. This is a great truth. One of the greatest truths. It is a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we transcend it. Once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult. Because once it is accepted, the fact that life is difficult no longer matters. Most do not fully see this truth that life is difficult. Instead, they moan more or less incessantly, noisily, or subtly about the enormity of their problems, their burdens, and their difficulties, as if life were generally easy, as if life should be easy. They voice their belief, noisily or subtly, that their difficulties represent a unique kind of affliction that should not be and that has somehow been especially visited upon them, or else upon their families, their tribe, their class, their nation, their race, or even their species, and not upon others. I know about this moaning because I have done my share. Life is a series of problems. Do we want to moan about them or solve them? Do we want to teach our children to solve them? Discipline is the basic set of tools we require to solve life's problems. Without discipline, we can solve nothing. With only some discipline, we can solve only some problems. With total discipline, we can solve all problems. What makes life difficult is that the process of confronting and solving problems is a painful one. Problems, depending upon their nature, evoke in us frustration or grief, or sadness, or loneliness, or guilt, or regret, or anger, or fear, or anxiety, or anguish, or despair. These are uncomfortable feelings, often very uncomfortable, often as painful as any kind of physical pain, sometimes equaling the very worst kind of physical pain. Indeed, it is because of the pain that events or conflicts engender in us that we call them problems. And since life poses an endless series of problems, Life is always difficult and is full of pain as well as joy. Yet, in this whole process of meeting and solving problems, that life has its meaning. Problems are the cutting edge that distinguishes between success and failure. Problems call forth our courage and our wisdom. Indeed, they create our courage and our wisdom. It is only because of problems that we grow mentally and spiritually. When we desire to encourage the growth of the human spirit, we challenge and encourage the human capacity to solve problems. Just as in school, we deliberately set problems for our children to solve. It is through the pain of confronting and resolving problems that we learn. As Benjamin Franklin said, those things that hurt instruct. It is for this reason that wise people learn not to dread, but actually to welcome problems, and actually to welcome the pain of problems. Most of us are not so wise. Fearing the pain involved, almost all of us, to a greater or lesser degree, attempt to avoid problems. We procrastinate, hoping that they will go away. We ignore them, forget them, pretend they do not exist. We even we even take drugs to assist us in ignoring them, so that by deadening ourselves to the pain, we can forget the problems that cause the pain. We attempt to skirt around problems rather than meet them head on. We attempt to get out of them rather than suffer through them. This tendency to avoid problems and the emotional suffering inherent in them is the primary basis of all human mental illness. Since most of us have this tendency to a greater or lesser degree, most of us are mentally ill to a greater or lesser degree, lacking complete mental health. Some of us will go to quite extraordinary lengths to avoid our problems and the suffering they cause, proceeding far afield from all that is clearly good and sensible in order to try to find an easy way out, building the most elaborate fantasies in which to live, sometimes to the total exclusion of the reality. In the secondly elegant words of Carl Jung, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. But the substitute itself ultimately becomes more painful than the legitimate suffering it was designed to avoid. The neurosis itself becomes the biggest problem. True to form, many will then attempt to avoid this pain and this problem in turn, building layer upon layer of neurosis. Fortunately, however, some process the encourage some po- some possess the courage to face their neurosis and begin, usually with the help of psychotherapy, to learn how to experience legitimate suffering. In any case, when we avoid the legitimate suffering that results from dealing with problems, we also avoid the growth that problems demand from us. It is for this reason that in chronic mental illness, we stop growing. We become stuck. And without healing, the human spirit begins to shrivel. Therefore, let us inculcate in ourselves and in our children the means of achieving mental and spiritual health. By this, I mean, let us teach ourselves and our children the necessity for suffering and the value thereof, the need to face problems directly and to experience the pain involved. I have stated that discipline is the basic set of tools we require to solve life's problems. It will become clear that these tools are techniques of suffering, means by which we experience the pain of problems in such a way as to work them through and solve them successfully. Learning and growing in the process when we teach ourselves and our children discipline. We are teaching them and ourselves how to suffer and how to grow. What are these tools, these techniques of suffering, this means of experiencing the pain of problems constructively that I call discipline? There are four: delaying of gratification, acceptance of responsibility, dedication to the truth, and balancing. As will be evident, these are not complex tools. Sorry. These are not complex tools whose application demands extensive training. To the contrary, they are simple tools, and almost all children are adept in their use by the age of 10. Yet presidents and kings will often forget to use them, to their own downfall. The problem lies not in the complexity of these tools, but in the will to use them. For they are tools with which pain is confronted rather than avoided. And if one seeks to avoid legitimate suffering, then one will avoid the use of these tools. Therefore, after analyzing each of these tools, we shall in the next section examine the will to use them, which is love. Hmm. This chapter hits me really well. My God. Yeah, this is how I am right now. I always try to escape from problems. I'm trying to avoid solving the problems that I encounter. No, growing up, yeah, I understand his points because that's how I grew up. No, the techniques of suffering, I think, from what I see, and in my surroundings as well, to the people in my surroundings, that they haven't practiced, discipline the same as me. As mentioned here, delaying of gratification. There are, what do you call it? Your short, when you watch short form videos, you get instant gratification. I don't know what's it called, but in this era, gratification is readily provided. There are lots of games, video forms, and that when we have problems, not just problems. I mean, there are like, for example, there are projects that you need, and then you won't do it now because you're thinking that it's difficult, and that you wanted to escape for a moment, and you just scroll down until there's a little bit of time left, and then you just literally procrastinate, and your project, you are able to do the project, but then it's not that up to standard, because you could have had faced the problem earlier to provide a better quality work. However, you're seeing that project as a big problem for you, so you just start escaping from your reality, something like that. The acceptance of responsibility. So I really learned a lot in this chapter, especially those four. Yeah, for now, I lack discipline. So my reflection on that, I should do gratification. Yeah. Acceptance of responsibility, dedication to truth, and balancing. These four I have a hard time doing currently. Yeah, I just have to practice discipline and face the problems that I am currently facing, and not to escape from it. Anyway, should I read this again? Ay, it was a good read.